Hi, this is David with entry number 638. I'm recording the day after the last one, so this is two consecutive entries in a row. And I mentioned yesterday that I wanted to discuss something else, but I didn't want to kind of break up the entry into two very diametrically opposite discussions, so I chose to record today instead a second topic. So I'll probably choose not to record tomorrow, and thus kind of switching the schedule back to every other day starting today. So what I wanted to talk about, and it's kind of prompted by viewing The Martian, is the concept of potential. Potential. What is potential? What is potential? And I think there's many ways to look at it, to look at potential. But at its core, how do we sort of define it? And then, therefore, kind of how is it reached? Or how is it ignored? Or how is it lost? Or how is it even gained? Are things that I would like to kind of discuss here. Well, maybe another time, the whole thing. But I think kind of something that the Martian kind of showed me, in a way, is this idea that a man's potential is unlimited, practically speaking. Given, certain parameters, of course, there's no limit to what a man or a woman, I'm just using man in terms of big M, man, there's no limit to what we can do as people. The movie was obviously a work of fiction, but it depicted, I think, somewhat realistic terms of how a person could survive without, a lot of the things that we would expect them to need to survive. And so that got me thinking about potential. I think obviously if you see the movie, you would agree that Mark Watney, the main character of the film, definitely lived to his potential and probably exceeded it to a very high degree. But that of course makes me at least think internally. And this might not be right, or it might not be, shouldn't have happened, but it did, is that, I turned the lens on myself. And I began to think about my own potential and the sort of, I don't know if you call it squandering or relaxation or laziness or fear or something else. But it got me thinking about, am I living up kind of to my potential? Am I doing sort of the most that I could do with my life as it is now? And I think in an obvious way, the answer is no. I think in a very obvious way, the answer is no. But, I think, as always, a big part of potential is perspective, is the kind of way you see that potential being lived up towards. And I think in a general sense, that is kind of the most dangerous aspect of foreigners coming to Korea, is the loss of that perspective. Where is that line? How does that line begin to blur into something that is very much not I would say, living up to one's potential. Um, you know, and in that moment of watching the film, I had a very great sense of guilt or shame, even. Uh, a very great sense of shame, I would say. Uh, I've talked about certain aspects of my life and my upbringing, and you think about things like paying it back or paying forward, or my big thing is, personally, I think it's important to have a healthy dose of parental uh, parental what's the word, not agreeableness, but like, basically, to put it more simply, I would like it for my parents to be able to, when they talk about me with their friends, or when they spend a little time and think about me in my current life, I would prefer it if they would be able to think about it, reflect, and smile, and not feel shamed. And, whether that's right or wrong, I know if they watch this, or when they watch this, that they're probably shaking their heads right now, saying, that's ridiculous, of course. But for me, that's the kind of bar I choose to hold myself to. And some may say that's unrealistic, some might say that's not healthy, some might say that's, a little bit messed up. But personally, I really feel that there should be, a metered, healthy amount of expectations that you should be meeting, your parents' expectations. And even if they're not real, even if they're inflated, I think there should be a healthy amount of, whether it be judgment or, review, reflection, criticism, whatever. I think there should be a healthy amount of that in every child's life to kind of counteract that kind of, idness of life. You don't want to just be running around and fulfilling every kind of pleasure center. Every aspect shouldn't just be about hedonism or Epicurean, delights. It should be, there should be a healthy amount of sort of guilt. But, and I'm not saying it be like Catholic style, where you feel guilty to the degree of like ruining your life, but I think there should be a healthy amount of self-review and keeping yourself in check. And for a lot of people my age, and I see around me a lot of foreigners here in Korea, I see that a lot of them have lost that ability to kind of find their true north, orientate, and orient themselves. And whether or not that's healthy, again, I don't know. I think it is, and that's how I choose to live my life. And that's kind of just the bottom line at the end of the day, is that I'm not going to allow myself to kind of just follow what I want all the time. And to a certain degree, I do allow myself certain things that I know I shouldn't. Like today, I ate a bag of chips, and it was like, probably don't need to eat that, but for whatever reason, I just allowed myself to do that. So whatever, I know it's not a huge thing, but so going back to potential, I know this is getting long, and I don't want to ramble, and I don't think I've rambled so far, but am I living up to my potential? Again, perspective. Is the potential a kind of seed idea where everyone can be like a redwood tree, you know, a 200 or 100-foot redwood tree, you know, and if they're not, making certain progressionary steps, does that necessarily mean that they're failing? I don't know, probably not, but you know, I think that everyone kind of should be able to feel in their heart kind of a trueness if they're living to their potential. If they ask themselves, if they look in the mirror and they ask themselves, in their heart of hearts, am I living up to my potential? And there's some hesitation, if there's some, clear signs that you're in fact not doing that, then I think, that should be a sign to kind of maybe pause and do a little bit more self-reflection or introspection at that point. But anyway, I don't know. I think I'll wrap it up there. There's a large part of who I am that I think is maybe not the most mentally healthy, but when I see it, maybe a lot of this reaction, this kind of formed reaction, is because of how deplorable I think a lot of the foreigners behave here. So maybe it's kind of exaggerated, but on the whole, this is where I'm at. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk with you in a couple days. Bye.